So today, we want to continue with another topic that is very interesting, that many people have not paid a lot of attention to, and that's food security. You know, we've in recent times seen how economies are crumbling. We've seen how Nigeria, most especially, has been affected by the effect of COVID-19. Nigeria has had to revise its budget a number of times. So one aspect of the economy that we've not paid serious attention to is the area that relates with nearly all of us. That's issue that concerns food. We need food to survive as humans. So we've searched for someone that is very competent with years of expertise in this area. I need to mute. I need to put the mute. Someone is disturbing me from somewhere. So we got someone that is very competent to deal with the topic, and that's Dr. Jelili Adebiyi from Michigan State University. Dr. Jelili Adebiyi is a sustainable development expert. He's been a fellow of Bill Gates Foundation on food security in Africa. He's done extensive research in this area. So I believe he would be able to do a lot of justice to this topic. So Dr. Jelili, over to you. Dr. Jelili, over to you. So you can unmute yourself. So you can unmute yourself, Dr. Jelili.
Hello.
Yes, you can unmute it. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the opportunity to make this presentation to the scholarly audience at Nile University. I specifically want to thank Dr. Nokpadio for the invitation. And I also want to thank the head of department, political science at Nile University, for co-hosting the event. And I equally want to thank friends and colleagues from the academia and outside of the academia who are participating in this event. I'm so much excited to talk about this because it has to do with an important topic that I'm very, very passionate about. It has to do with something that I've been working on for the past, in the last 1 decade. And I'm also very passionate about Nigeria. My presentation is going to follow the outline on the slides. Yeah, it's going to follow this outline on the slide. I'm going to start with a brief delineation of the concept that feed into my presentation. Following the delineation of concept, I'll be talking about what food security was in Nigeria pre-COVID-19. And after speaking about that, I'll proceed to discuss how food security has been impacted by the outbreak of COVID-19 in Nigeria. And in doing this, I will look at it from 3 streams of thought: the implication of food security, the implication of COVID-19 on food security now in the country, in the medium term and in the long term. And after all of this, I will talk about my projected scenario of food security in regards to COVID-19 in Nigeria. And the discussion is going to end with a concluding thought that offers a policy proposition regarding what the government and the people of Nigeria can do to mitigate some of the projected food security impact of COVID-19 in the country. So to start with, I'd like to briefly mention that I've deliberately decided to adopt what we call the food systems approach to elucidate on the topic that I'm speaking on today. And I made this decision for reasons that you will come to understand very soon. Food system is something that has been described as a complex web of activities that involve the production of food itself. And when we talk about the production of food, we are talking about the production of food from the farm arena. And it dovetails into the distribution of foods, the processes of food, the marketing and consumption of food. And it also involves the waste associated with the disposal of the waste associated with the process of producing and eating food. And it also encompasses physical resources. That is not just everything about our food system. Our food systems also includes the governance system, the economics of food production, the sustainability, and the degree to which food actually affects our human beings, affect natural resources and individual population health. So the food system is an all-encompassing term that encompasses all of this. And this slide specifically puts a deeper context into my definitional deconstruction of food systems. Here you see that the production component can be further disaggregated into land, which forms the basis of food production itself. And farmers will always tell you, you don't want to consume your production capital when you're into farming. And by production capital in farming, specifically, they are talking about soil. Because when you consume your soil, it's as if you've consumed your production capital. And what that means is that you don't have any business going further with farming. So it also encompasses, from the production perspective, the labor that goes into food production. It also encompasses the energy and the equipment. So in this slide, you have a bigger understanding of each of those elements that are associated with some of the pivotal components that defines our food systems. Our food systems also comprises what I broadly refers to as stakeholders in our food system. So when we're talking about food systems, it's not just about the production component. It's not about the distribution logistics, It's also about the stakeholders, which within the context of my presentation would be broadly categorized into two. The stakeholder read as the people and the stakeholder read as the government. So the people in this context includes farmers who are involved in the process of growing our food and getting our foods across to us for us to eat. And it will also involve the retailers who are involved in the process of marketing food, and it is through them that we mostly get the food that we want to buy from our market, from our shopping malls, and etc., etc. And another major stakeholder in the food system are the consumers, the people. We, the people, the consumers. And the very interesting thing about consumers is that farmers could be consumers of food as well, for many reasons. One, they consume the food that they produce. Two, farmers, especially subsistence farmers, which account for about 70% of the farming population in Nigeria, they are not able to produce all the food that they want to eat at home. So they buy food in the market as well. So when we talk about consumers within the context of our food systems, a consumer also includes farmers because they're not able to produce sufficient amount of food that they need to feed their family. So they have to go to the food market to buy food. So the consumer is, even the government itself also comes from that consumer when you're talking about the food system. So this delineation doesn't mean that, it's a thing that stands alone, really. Everything is interconnected to one another. And we have government, and this could be local government, this could be federal government, it could be state government in the context of Nigeria. And when we look at food system from a global perspective, we might be talking about continental government, we might be talking about global government. So there is another level of analysis that goes into this. But for the purposes of our conversation today, I will be focusing exclusively on people and government on the confines of Nigeria. So this is another important concept in our food system that intertwine with the production, the distribution, and the consumption of food, the stakeholders. Another definitive element of the food systems, what we call the outcomes, the expected outcome of a food system. So it's not just about producing food, it's about producing food for who and producing food for what purposes. We are not just in the business of producing food for the sake of producing food. Food system is meant to achieve certain interconnected multiple objectives. And this includes the objective of contributing to the wellness of communities, to the wellness of individuals, and to the wellness of a country. And that is why it's been said among scholars in the development arena, and even it's been recognized by governments across the world, that food security is indeed a national security for many reasons. Because anything that threatens the wellness of the country, the wellness of the individuals or communities in the country, might as well put the country on the path of, on the path of revolt or on the path of crisis. Another objective that the food system is meant to achieve is to foster economic and social wellness. Economic in the sense that it is meant to generate income for the farmers, it is meant to generate income for the government, it is meant to generate income for all the stakeholders that are involved in the food system, either directly or indirectly. It could generate this economic, returns to the country through, transaction, the sales of food within the country and exportation of food outside the country. And it could also generate economic benefits for a country or for individuals through job creation. So there are many ways that the food system actually generates economic benefit for individuals, for a country, and for all the stakeholders that are involved in our food system. And the other thing is that a food system is also meant to preserve the environment because food actually takes place within the environment. Food processing takes place within the environment. If the environment is destroyed, it's going to have effect on the farm landscape, and whatever has effect on the farm landscape will severely and negatively affect food production itself. And a very vital goal of a food system is to foster the objective of food security. And that's what we are discussing today. So when people talk about food system, when people talk about food security is one of the inalienable components of a food system. It's not a stand-alone concept. And that is why the conversation about food security is better explored from a food system perspective, because it enables us to see how different factors could actually contribute to improving the food security or making the food security in a particular country to be vulnerable. Another important concept that we need to be aware of before we proceed to the substance of our conversation today is the concept of interconnectedness. As you can see on the slide on the screen, everything in the food system is interconnected. Food production is connected to food distribution because our farmers, when they produce their food, they need to get their food to the market. And if they produce their food and they're not able to get it to the market, it's going to affect their own production capacity, because their production capacity is a function of making financial gains from their food. And if they're not able to get their food to the consumers, then it's going to have a disruptive effect, or we call it feedback effect, on the food production system. And the food distribution system in itself, it has effect on the access and the accessibility and affordability of consumers to food. If the food production system, distribution system is not effective enough to reach the final consumers of food, then the food will never get across to them, meaning that people will not be able to buy the food and farmers will not be able to make money. And that will have a disruptive effect on the food system, without likely to have negative consequences for the food system. So food systems interconnectedness actually refers to the fact that every single thing in a food system, the people, the production system, the anticipated outcome of the food system, everything is connected to the other. And the connectedness of all these components in the food system is such that they are characterized by feedbacks. And feedbacks means that if anything happens to any of the components that are connected to one another, it could be one of two things or both. The consequences could be potentiating, meaning that it could be aggravated either in the positive direction or in the negative direction, meaning that if there is an outbreak of a pandemic, just like we have with COVID-19, it might actually have very negative consequences on the entire food production chain, without likely to have very severe negative consequences on food security as well. And it could be balancing as well. Balancing means in the sense that, if it is going in a positive direction, it could balance it in a negative direction, and you have a state of equilibrium. So it is characterized by this kind of feedback interaction. And the nature of the interaction in the food system is that it's not simplistic. It is very, very complex because price effect of the produce that farmers are producing is enough to create a system-wide destabilization in the food system. If the price is not favorable to farmers, it will get distributed of food out of market. And once they're out of market, the entire food system can be shut down. Even the outbreak of a disease could bring about a very severe negative impact on the food system in a way that we never can imagine. And that is why we describe the nature of relationship as very complex, non-linear, and dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that the fact that we know of whatever happens to the food system today might not necessarily be the effect that will happen tomorrow, that we will know tomorrow. And this needs to be taken into cognizance, especially by policymakers. Because when they make policy, they always make it based on what we call the linear construction of reality. But that has not necessarily been the case with the food system. And that is why many policies that are responding to the issue of COVID-19, vis-a-vis food security part of COVID-19, has been based on this siloed approach, the linear approach, and we've not been getting commensurate, very positive results, especially in Nigeria, looking at the palliative that have been put in place by the government. So another very interesting component, concept I will talk about briefly before actually going into the substance of my presentation today, is to delineate the concept of food security, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the goals, one of the outcomes that a food system is actually meant to achieve. Food security has been defined as a situation that exists when all people, all the time, emphasis on all people, not just on individuals, the rich, the poor, the vulnerable, just name it, when they have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their daily dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This is the more or less a universal definition that most scholars and experts that are working in the food systems have adopted. When you look at this definition, it basically speaks to three components of a food system that defines what food security is. There is the availability component of a food security, and availability has to do with the production of food. It has to do with the processing of food. It has to do with things that are related to people are able to access the food in the market. Then the access component of food security. It has to do with people are able to, if I want to buy food, I should be able to access it. Accessing means that I have the means of transportation to get access to buy food wherever I want to buy food, whether I want to buy my food from ShopRite, or whether I want to buy my food from Bileko or from any of these vernacular markets in the country. And it equally means that there is equitable distribution of food, meaning that if I live in a rural area, if I live in a suburb, if I live in the interior of a city, I should be able to have access to the food that I need, the same way that people that are living in the interior of a city will be able to have access to the quantity of food and the type of food that they are in need of. Access also involves the marketability aspect of it. Another very interesting component of the food security access is affordability. And this has to do with purchasing power of people. Anything that addresses any of these in terms of food affordability, maybe because of spikes in prices of food prices, might affect the food security in the country. So when we talk about food security, many people always conflate it that, people are able to buy food. They don't think about the fact that are they able to afford this food? Are they able to access the food by the time they need this food? So if any of these is threatened, including the utilization of food, then we have what we call a food insecurity situation. A food insecurity situation could be mild, it could be severe, it could be chronic, it could be long term, it could be short term, it could be immediate, it could be anything. So we come to talk extensively about this as a presentation unfolds. So having discussed this concept called food security and food system, I think it's important for us to have a look at what the food security situation of Nigeria was before the outbreak of COVID-19. As some of you might be aware of, and as some of you, might be, getting to know for now, right now, in 2019, Nigeria was ranked 94 out of 133 countries on the 2019 Global Food Security Index. And what this means is that Nigeria is one of the most food insecure countries in the world. I mean, people can have debate about the indicators, the metrics that the economists use in deciding which country is actually food secure or not. But the thing is that we can't just discount this rating of the global of the economists. Because over and again, other indicators have actually suggested that Nigeria is facing various forms of food insecurity challenges for one reason or the other. Equally, we come to know that in 2019, that 66 million people in Nigeria were experiencing severe or moderate forms of food insecurity. I mean, this is a statistics that is reliable and that is based on very good data. And we also come to know that about more than 25.6 million in the country, as of 2018, we are suffering from undernourishment. And this includes about 2.5 million kids. And this is one of the reasons why the federal government in Nigeria has, actually put in place what they call the school feeding program, so that they can attend the problem of undernourishment that is actually affecting kids, that is affecting their intellectual development. And it's been a very good program. It's been delivering some objective, and the government has carried over this program through COVID-19 era. And as you can see on this map, the food security situation before the outbreak of COVID-19 in Nigeria, it was not necessarily the same for all parts of the country. As you can see, the food security is very mild in the southwestern part of the country. It's not that severe in the southeastern part of the country. But when you go to the northeastern part of the country and some other part of the northern part of the country, you can see that we have from mild, emergency, and severe food security crisis for a number of reasons, including the problem of Boko Haram. Boko Haram has been disrupting food production in some part of the country, and that possibly explains why the food security situation was before COVID-19 severe in some northeastern part of the country. So this is the situation before COVID-19. We need to have this at the back of our mind in order for us to understand the consequences, the immediate, the possible mid-term and long-term consequences of COVID-19 on food security in Nigeria, because this is building on existing condition pre-COVID-19. So wherever we are going to be talking about, we'll be looking at how COVID-19 has aggravated the food security condition that existed pre-COVID-19 in Nigeria. So when COVID-19 started in Nigeria, I think the first case was recorded on February 27. And that was the case of an Italian who traveled down to the country for a consultancy job in Ogun State, to be precise. And since February 27, the number of COVID cases, COVID-19 cases in Nigeria has increased over the time. There has been an exponential growth. As at yesterday, the country had a total of 6,401 COVID-19 cases. And of these, about 475 cases were delinated to be active. A good number of people has been discharged, and the recovery rate is about 21.7%. So the growth in the number of COVID-19 from February 27, when the country first experienced the first index case, has necessitated that the government takes some immediate action to contain the continuous spread of this deadly pandemic disease in the country. And in connections to this, the president addressed the country on 29th of March 2020. He gave a national broadcast where he rolled out some policy measures that were meant to help contain the spread of the disease. These were meant to help what they call flatten the curve. And he gave another address on the 13th of April 2020, and he gave a third address on the 27th of April 2020. He was meant to give another address 2 days ago, but the address did not actually take place. However, what we're focusing on in terms of government reaction is the fact that the government imposed lockdown, countrywide lockdown measure. The country was on a lockdown, just like it's been done in the United States, it's been done in several African countries. And part of this lockdown measure that was imposed by the government in Nigeria encompasses the closures of all the land borders in the country. And what this means is that people cannot move in, people cannot move out of the country. It means that farm inputs are not moving, farm inputs cannot also move out of the country. And the government also closed down airspaces and ports. And, that again, I want us, as we are looking at this thing, to be going back to the component of our food systems. We talked about the distribution, we talked about the production, and then the government started to ease the lockdown for many reasons, including the fact that they've been recording experiences, pockets of protests here and there, where people have been saying that this lockdown is indeed an hunger crisis. People in Nigeria felt that hunger will kill them more than COVID-19 will kill them, and the government itself, they've been having some economic, losses from the lockdown, and that has necessitated that the country actually started in lockdown. So our focus in this discussion is to look at how all this measure and COVID-19 will affect the food system, and in fact, and subsequently, food security in Nigeria now, in the medium term, and in the long term. So, one of the major stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, in our food systems are the farmers. These are one of the people, those that I call people in the context of this presentation. Before the outbreak of COVID-19, farmers were about preparing for the new production season. The production season in Nigeria usually, it starts sometimes around April. Farmers, they start all this preparation sometimes from February, even from January. They start looking at what am I going to plant this year, the labor that I need to use. They start preparing all the input that they need to use. And around February, the preparation of the planting season would have intensified. So the time that the COVID-19 outbreak happened in Nigeria coincided with the time that farmers were making the preparations, getting, ready for the next production season. And what we come to understand is that because of the lockdown that the government has imposed, so farmers, it disrupted the distribution of inputs within the country in itself, meaning that inputs were not getting to rural areas where farmers actually need them. And farmers are not able to access transportation that will get them to the urban centers where they buy most of this input. This includes seeds that farmers will need to buy. And as we speak currently, some of the farmers that I interacted with, since the outbreak of COVID-19, they told me that some of the seed, their preferred seed materials are actually out of stock. You are not able to restock. The seed dealers are not able to restock because they depend on importation of seed into the country. So that has affected the decision of what farmers will actually plant and their preparation for the process of planting. And what this means is that if farmers are not able to get all this input, in the medium and the long term, food production will be disrupted massively in Nigeria. And once this is disrupted, it means that the country will be locked on the path of severe food crisis. The food production system will exacerbate, and the food availability component and food access component of the food systems in Nigeria, of the food security in Nigeria, will go in the negative direction. So farmers are currently struggling with this. And another thing that the farmers are struggling with has to do with the affordability of the available inputs. So some of the seed dealers decide taking advantage of the situation that the lockdown order in the country has created. So they start telling people that these seeds are not available. So seeds that farmers were buying for 200 naira, 500 naira are suddenly increased to about 1,500. And that means that the production aspect of the food system is actually being constrained. And the majority of these farmers, what they planned for was that they usually had a plan of the amount of money they were going to invest on buying seed, on buying chemicals that they will use to grow their crops. But this has been disrupted by the lockdown that has been imposed by the government. So from this perspective, it can be highly conveniently that Nigeria is going to experience in the long term a severe disruption to its food system without likely to implicate a very severe food security crisis for the country. Another problem has to do with tariffs. The lockdown means that farmers were not able to bring their food items to sell in the urban centers. A majority of these farmers, when they harvest their produce, they make better money by taking their food to urban centers. So because of the restriction imposed on the movement of vehicles and the movement of, Okada from the rural area to the urban center, from the rural area to the urban centers, so farmers have made the decision not to even harvest their crops. So majority of the farmers in Nigeria during the lockdown were actually left their crops in the farm to start rotting away. So they eat whatever they can eat, they sell whatever they can sell within the rural communities. So if this should continue in the long term, what this means is that the food supplies to market will be severely disrupted, and this will plug the country on the path of severe food insecurity. The other part of it is marketing. And as you know, a big part of the food market in Nigeria is defined by informality, meaning that it is this wet market, the vernacular market, that a big part of the food market in Nigeria actually takes place. In all this market that we used to go to in Oyinbo, the market that we used to go to in Moniya, in Ibadan, the market we used to go to in Guagalada, all these, not in the malls. Majority of the people who go to this wet market to buy their food. But because of the lockdown order and because of the nature of COVID-19, so these marketing activities is being disrupted in the short term. And if Nigeria should continue to experience growth in the cases of COVID-19, it is very possible that the government might impose another complete lockdown in the country, which is likely to affect food access. Because the marketing component will affect food access. If people are not able to access food, and if farmers are not able to get their food to the market to sell, it means that farmers themselves, they won't produce for the next season because they might not even have the money to produce for the next season. Another way that COVID-19 is actually going to pose a severe food security crisis in Nigeria is to look at it from the labor perspective. Majority of the farm laborers in Nigeria, they come from Togo and they come from Cotonou. And a good number of it also come from Benue. Because of the restriction that has been placed on the movement of vehicles, on the movement of people across and within the country and outside of the country into the country, this has severely disrupted the farm labor market in the country. And before COVID-19, Nigeria was expressing farmers were having issues with getting, farm labor people to hire for their job for many reasons. One, some of these guys, they've gone into Okada businesses because they believe they make more money from it, so they are leaving farm jobs. And some of them, it's because of the crisis of Boko Haram, because those that were coming from Benue, those that were coming from, Cotonou, those that were coming from Togo, because of the issue of Boko Haram, we've been having shortfall in the number of available imported farm laborers into Nigeria. And with COVID-19, this part of the food production chain in Nigeria has been disrupted. And what this means is that farmers might not have sufficient labor to do their regular farm site that they would like to cultivate in a particular growing season. And once farmers reduce their acreage in production, the implication is that the quantity of food that gets produced in Nigeria will be severely affected in the long term. And once this happens, this might trigger severe food insecurity in the country. And even farmers themselves, their actual labor is being threatened by COVID-19. Because if COVID-19 should take massive presence in the rural country part of the country, because for now we don't actually have disaggregated data in Nigeria that actually tells us the rate of spread of COVID-19 within farming communities. But given what we know about COVID-19, if COVID-19 should go pandemic and should go massive in rural Nigeria, the affordability of farmers' household labor might be affected. And once this is severely affected, it's going to have a destructive impact, very severe destructive impact on food production. And once food production is disrupted in the country, it's going to have negative consequences on food security in the country. So this is one of the ways that I'm predicting that if all of these things should hold, the food security in the country might actually go severely negative if efforts are not made to speak to all of this. And the other very interesting component is the extension component. Extension has always been in short supply, particularly to smallholder country farmers in the country. With COVID-19, the farmers that have been speaking to different parts of the country, they've been telling me that, extension agents, they don't even come again to us now because they are afraid of contacting COVID-19. Most of these extension agents, they use public transportation. With restriction of movement at the beginning of COVID-19 in Nigeria, it means that farmers cannot even have so this extension agent. And now that the COVID-19 restriction order in the country has been eased, then extension agents are equally refusing to go to rural area because they are afraid if I get this disease, it becomes my problem. Because there is no life insurance policy that guarantees them that if, as a government extension agent, you have this COVID-19, the government is going to be responsible for the consequences. In the case of death, they will take care of the family, and etc., etc. So everybody is just trying to keep safe by saying that, oh, labor is a problem, and this is sending negative signals to food production and to the potential food security situation in the country. I further take a look at it from the types of farmer perspective. In Nigeria, just like we have in the United States and anywhere in the world, we can categorize farmers as rural farmers and urban farmers. The impact of COVID-19 for farmers in the rural areas may not necessarily be the same for farmers in urban areas. Also, we can also look at farmers for the perspective of large versus small-scale farmers. The impact of COVID-19 on large-scale farmers might not necessarily be as the same as the impact of COVID-19 on small-scale farmers. And here we need to take into cognizance the majority of the farmers in Nigeria, more than 70% of the farmers in Nigeria, they are smallholder farmers. They are in poverty, they are resource constrained, they don't have regular extension access, meaning that the extension access of smallholder farmers might actually be disrupted. And once that is disrupted, it might have very severe impact on their food productivity. That might not necessarily be the case with large farmers, because they have their own extension agent that they employ that work for them. So they will be mandated to go to work and work with the farmers. So the disruption is more likely to affect small-scale farmers. And whatever affects small-scale farmers in the country is going to have massive impact on the food production in the country, because these are the major food producers in the country. And the other way to look at it is instant farmers, meaning that a farmer is living in Lagos. However, the production of the farm, his farm business is actually located in Ibadan. So with COVID-19, these farmers were not able to move from Lagos to Ibadan to attend to their farms. And there's also what we call intrastate farmers. And a very good example of intrastate farmer in Nigeria is somebody who actually is living in Oshodi, but his farm is located in the border town between Lagos and Ogun State, meaning that the person needs to travel from Ibadan, from Oshodi, down to where his farm is located in the border town between Lagos and Ogun State. For this type of farmers, they are not able to move around too, because the government regulation has not actually encompassed this category of farmers. And there is two types of farmers, the farm settlement farmers. Farm settlement farmers are farmers that are farming in areas that have been designated as farm settlements by the government. Some of them are living in that area. Some of them are not living within the farm settlement, meaning that the restriction, if it has not given opportunity for all these farms of farmers, to have access to their farms, it means that these farmers might be kept out of production. And once they are kept out of production, this will send negative signals to the food security condition in the country, because this might impact the quantity of food that is actually produced and that gets to the market and that gets to our various homes. And once we experience shortfall in food production, it is very likely that the country might actually be plunged on the path of a very severe food insecurity. So another component of the food system that I also want us to focus on in this presentation is the people now delineated as food and input distributors. One of the negative consequences of food security in Nigeria and elsewhere in the world is that it disrupted food chain distribution. That is, the distribution logistics of moving food from wherever the food is produced, either from the rural area or from the urban area, because of the restriction orders. Because of the restriction orders, food don't get moved easily the way they get moved with COVID-19. So as a result of this breakage, some of the people that are informed in this, it's characterized by informality. The transporters in Nigeria, the people that provide commercial transportation services, they're involved in this. There are some people that have dedicated logistic services that are used to move food from either northern part of the country down to the southwestern or the southeastern part of the country. Some of these people are not even registered with the government. So, and the activities have been disrupted because they face a lot of challenges. And the other thing has to do with the distribution component that has to do with the movement of input, either outside of the country to the country or within the country. And here we need to take a particular cognizance of two things. One, the farmers in rural areas, they live in interiors, so they have to travel from the rural areas, get to these urban centers to buy many of these farm input. They are not able to do this. Even sometimes when they have the transportation logistic, they simply can't pay for the transportation because COVID-19 has disrupted, transportation within the urban center and the rural center, and from urban center to the rural center. So all of these things is affecting food production input. It's also affecting the movement of food to the market center. And the implication of this is that food availability might in the medium and long term be severely disrupted in Nigeria as a result of the disruption to the food and input distribution system in the country. And this will also have consequences on food accessibility and affordability. And we have seen this, one of the logistic countries in the country, I've been having conversation with them and I've been reading about them. And they said that 30% of their fleet across Nigeria, Kenya, Togo, and Uganda was not operating as a result of COVID-19. This means that the food chain in the country, the food distribution and input distribution chain in the country is being threatened. And if the magnitude of the withdrawal of this distribution logistic increases, then the country might actually be plunged into a severe food insecurity, food availability, food accessibility, and affordability crisis in the short and long term. This is one of the comments from the VP Global Operation of COBO 360. He said governments announced the cessation of movement. Within this remit, it stated that businesses involved in food and distribution are exempt. However, that does not seem to be clearly communicated to law enforcement, or the fact that the distribution vehicle may not necessarily be branded for them to be identified as essential goods. I've spoken about this when I was talking about the aspect of informality that has to do with the movement of food across the country. And this has been resulting in drivers being stopped and at times being harassed. And a lot of drivers have complained of this across the country, that the security guys are intimidating them, they are harassing them, and this is affecting the movement of food. And as a result of this, people don't get adequate food, and the little food that gets to the market, the prices are being hiked. As a result, people find it difficult to buy sufficient amount of food with the same amount of money they were using to buy the same amount of food, and that is plugging their household on the part of food insecurity in the short term. And if this should continue and carry over to the future, it's going to have a market severe negative consequences on the food security condition in the country. So we also look at the impact of COVID-19 from people delineated as food retailers. They've also been on the receiving end of COVID-19 in the country and on the receiving end of the impact of the restriction order that was imposed by the government, either at the federal level government or at the state level government in the country. As I mentioned earlier on, the food system in Nigeria, the food market in Nigeria is mainly dominated by what we call the vernacular food market, the wet market, the majority of the people go to buy their foods. And so the impact has been more severe on vernacular food market because many of these women, they sell their food elsewhere, they need to move from their houses to where they will sell their food, and they are not even receiving adequate supply because what they do is to buy these food items on a daily basis. They go to where they want to buy their food, bring it to the market and sell because they don't have the resources for storage facility. And that is not necessarily with the case with food malls. Like ShopRite, they have a central storage system where they actually have stored their food over time. So they are not actually experiencing a lot of, effect compared to those in the vernacular market. And what this means is that if the market women are not actually making a lot of money, it's going to affect their own food security condition at the household level. Because majority of these market women, the money they make from the sales of their food is what they use to feed their family. So once their own source of income is disrupted, it will affect their own household economy. And that will have consequences on household and community level food security. The other thing is that they are facing strategies because farmers, they are leaving their crops unharvested. You just leave things to rotting away. Because what is the point in harvesting your crop, putting your time and energy to harvest your crop when you don't actually have the vehicular logistics to get them to the market for a number of reasons? And the other things that the food retailers are facing now is the issue of cost. The landing cost of food has increased. As a result, they have to increase the cost of the prices of food as well. And the government has not put in place policies that will mitigate the landing cost of food in the country. And if this should continue with the rising rate, with the growth in COVID-19 in the country, it is possible for food insecurity, severe food insecurity, to be actually triggered through this pathway in the country. You can see there are many pathways through which food security can actually be triggered. The other part is over the exploitation on the part of food retailers. A lot of food retailers, they are taking advantage of the situation that has surrounded COVID-19 by saying, oh, we just need to hike this price because we are not getting adequate supply. Transportation cost has increased, and the security guys, we need to get money to them for us to sell our food. So they've been exploiting the situation. So, and what that means is that they are passing the price hike on the consumers. And the consumers, if they are not able to afford to buy food, the implications is that they might not even buy food, or they might just buy insufficient food that their household actually needs. So over time, if the situation of COVID-19 actually stands as it is by increasing in the country, it is very possible that this component of the food system can actually plunge the country into a very severe and very highly unmanageable food insecurity from the perspective of food availability. And just yesterday, when I was reading the newspaper in the country, Lagos,
hello.
What do you say?
Yes, we don't have much time anymore, so you can try to summarize now.
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. So there are other ways that COVID-19 could actually plunge the country on the part of food insecurity. There is the consumer perspective. A lot of people, they've lost their job. Unemployment has always been an issue in Nigeria, and with COVID-19, unemployment just went higher in the country, meaning that people don't have money to buy food. And if this should continue, that will have a severe impact on the food security condition in the country. And the government itself is also being affected in a way because the government is cutting down on its budget for the year, and the government has been depleting their reserve, including the grain reserve in the country. And it's very possible that if the economic situation, implication of COVID-19 should increase in the country, government might not be able to pay salary. And when governments are not able to pay salary in the country, what it means is that people might not have access to money to actually buy food. And when people don't have access to buy food, there might be the problem of chronic national food insecurity. This is very important for us to take note. So my projected outlook is this for Nigeria. If the exponential growth of COVID-19 in the country should continue, it's very possible that Nigeria experiences the New York situation. No one prays for this. If this happens, Nigeria will be plugged on the path of severe food insecurity. The second scenario is that Nigeria might actually experience a very mild COVID-19 situation, given what we know about COVID-19 outbreak in Africa. And if that is the case, Nigeria might not necessarily experience severe long-term food insecurity crisis. And it's very possible that the government is able to contain COVID-19, given some of the positive, reactions, some of the positive progress that the country actually made when the pandemic disease actually broke out. It's very possible. If this scenario holds in the country, it's very possible that we won't even have in the long-term food insecurity crisis in the country, but we might experience some food insecurity crisis in the medium time. It could be severe, it could be mild, it could be chronic. We don't actually know what the situation could be. We're still working on this. There are models that are being built to actually speak to this. My conclusion thought is this: to forestall severe food insecurity in the country, the government needs to do aggressive testing. And this needs to extend to the rural areas. The other thing is that, given the knowledge, the numbers that we know about COVID-19 in Nigeria, it appears that it's mostly an urban phenomenon in the country. So the government should do well to contain the entry of COVID-19 into the rural areas. Because if the rural areas become the epicenter of COVID-19 in the country, it's very possible that the country food production system in the country would be severely affected. And what that means is that the country might actually experience severe food insecurity. The other thing that the government needs to do better in the country is to leverage Nigeria's informality. That's what I call the neighborhood food distribution system in the country. When you go to neighborhoods in Nigeria, people sell food. You can access raw food, you can access cooked food. The government has not really done well leveraging this to mitigate the food security impact, the food access impact during the time when they actually imposed total lockdown in the country. If the growth of this pandemic decision to increase in Nigeria and the government will have to impose another lockdown order, it's very important that the government leverage a neighborhood food security system to actually mitigate potential food insecurity impact of COVID-19. And this might mean that the government needs to work with food retailers at the neighborhood level. This might mean that the government will encourage communities to start to ban community garden. And when you go back to Cuba, when Cuba had, this kind of very messy situation when the United States imposed some sanctions on them, some countries in the world imposed some sanctions on them. What they did was to go back to the community levels. They were growing food on top of the roof. They were growing food in the neighborhood of the houses. Everywhere became food production center. As a result of this, they were able to mitigate the potential expected severe food insecurity impact of the restrictions that they experience from the United States and other part of the world. And the other thing that the government needs to do is to move away from their silo responses. What the government has been doing in the country is based on silo responses. What I'm advocating for the government in Nigeria is what I call the nexus-oriented action and policy response. And I'm available to answer this question about this at the end of this presentation. And I do think the government of Nigeria, we need to do more mobilizing community action to forestall the country being plugged on the path of severe food insecurity. I thank all of you for listening, and I thank you all again at Nile University for the opportunity to make this presentation, and I look forward to your questions and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jelili. That was a very beautiful presentation. It's been able to unravel several mysteries around the issue of food security in Nigeria. Dr. Adebiyi has been able to paint a very scary picture about the future of food security in Nigeria, although I do not really subscribe to some of these doomsday scenarios being painted from the West, but he's actually entitled to it's a product of his research. He's entitled to his opinion about things that are happening in the country. So, but I don't think the reality on ground has been able to support some of the findings we are getting from the West. So I'm going to open the floor for questions for him to be able to respond to and some comments about his presentation. So if you have questions, please, you can just unmute yourself to ask the questions so for him to be able to respond. Let me try to, so you can unmute yourself if you have comments or questions on his presentation.
Adebiyi at MS.
So, hello, is there anyone speaking at the background? Hello? Hello? Do you have anyone with, yes, okay.
I have a question, sir. Good evening, sir. Okay. Good evening, doctor.
Okay, yes. So, Mr. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Yeah, my question to Dr. Jelili is in respect to the greenhouse farming, the intensive cultivation. That there is this situation with the global warming, the campaign that the ozone layer in the nearest very close future, even Singapore adopted a 30 by 30 food security program, and also preparing for 2050 for food sustainable agriculture and things like that. Now, for those of us in Africa, and with this situation of COVID-19, and probably maybe the whole thing is moving to the rural area and all of that, how can those of us in Africa be a part and beneficiary of the sustainable agriculture that promotes the agrarian situation like that? I want him to throw a little more light into that sustainable agriculture, how it can have impact on those of us in Africa and Nigeria.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Do we have any other questions from any of the participants here?
I only have a comment.
Okay, yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by saying well done to Nile University for sponsoring a program of this nature. And not only that, I would like to say well done to Dr. Hakeem Onakwajo for spearheading it. And because a program of this nature has, given Nile University more global presence. Now, going back to I forgot to say well done to the presenter as well, Dr. Adebiyi, for a well-researched presentation. Not only that, the presentation was well articulated and with well-coordinated slides. However, like Dr. Onakwajo said, this is not a conspiracy, but I don't seem to agree with the findings or with the scary scenario that the presenter has painted. Because whether we like it or not, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought about, it has disrupted virtually everything around the world. It has brought about physical security, human security, food security, and any form of insecurity you can ever think of. Now, when you look at the Nigeria's situation, you will agree with me that before now, the Nigerian government has been doing well in trying to diversify the economy, but implementing certain policies like the border closure, like the incentives given to farmers and all that. To me, I think it's not as scary as Dr. Adebiyi has presented it. And if we are able to take away, or if we are able to resolve the problem of physical security, like the insurgency in the Northeast that you earlier mentioned, the food security issue wouldn't be that much impactful. Because if you look at that slide, I don't know the number of the slide, where you have the map of Nigeria, where you're able to tell us yes, this one. Thank you. So when you look at it, the problem is more severe in the Northeast, and we all know why. We all know why, which means if that why is taken out of the equation, then the problem will be resolved. So that is my take. Sorry, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dele Babalola from the UK. So do we have any other person that wants to join in question or comment? So we can take two more questions for him to respond to.
I wanted to ask a question quickly. Just something that crossed my mind while the presentation was going on. My name is Salah Gunubi.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation and for the team at Nile University. This is quite well thought through. I wanted to ask two questions quickly. Is it not true that the idea of food security might be a myth in Nigeria, considering the assumption that people will tell you that, or what may tell you that it's actually a question of there's food availability, but people do not necessarily have the means to buy this food. And so then what you're talking about is food wastage. So we see an abundance of food among us, but people do not necessarily have the economic means to purchase, or the purchasing power to buy some of these things some of this food that they need. Secondly, I was hoping that you might want to touch a little bit on the effect of the August 2019 border closure on how that has impacted on the level of our food security in Nigeria, particularly in the context of the current pandemic that we are in. So the question is, would we have been more stressed, as your map show, if we had not closed our border, or would we be less stressed? Are we less stressed today by the reason of the border closure, given the context of the COVID-19 that we are currently experiencing? Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hello,
good evening, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, just identify yourself and go ahead.
Okay, my name is Adebiyi. I'm a friend to the presenter and a friend of the university too. I would like to appreciate the university for putting out this kind of interactive and a very informative discourse, and which is very pertinent to the time we are in. And I also pray that God will continue to protect all of us as we go on with this pandemic. To the presenter, you've done a very wonderful job in your research and in your presentation. It was well articulated and well delivered. Well done. Okay, my question goes to the fact that when we look at, in terms of food security that you've actually given a very deep insight on, I want to know that if we look at the issue of insecurity that somebody raised earlier on, like the issue of Boko Haram that we have had in the last 10 years, since 2010, we've had different projections, different scenarios, or within the next 3 years, Nigeria is going to turn into Ethiopia of the 90s. We are going to have famine like Somalia and all those stuff. And all those things never happened. What do you think? Because with the way the pandemic is going, yes, nobody has seen this before, and nobody can predict anything accurately. But I just want to take a cue from the resilient spirit of the Nigerian that Nigerian spirit that is resilient. And even because most people outside do not understand the Nigerian economy. To most people, if you're outside the Nigerian economy, you don't understand it, because in other places everything is well structured. But the unstructured nature of the Nigerian economy makes it very difficult for a lot of people to understand the Nigerian economy. And if you base it on what is obtainable in a more developed world, you will just be missing out. You will just be missing it completely. So my own question is, looking at what was projected based on Boko Haram and all those insecurities that we have had, that even up to now, 10 years after, we still have not had that kind of crisis. Yes, we have the problem of transportation of food products from the farms down to the urban area. Those are infrastructural problems, which I think governments should pay attention to, which maybe in a way some are doing it, some states are doing it, and some are still lagging behind on it. So what do you think, well, look at it from that scenario, do you think the picture that you're trying to paint in terms of the pandemic, what is the likelihood of that occurring in the Nigerian economy? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Dr. Jelili, you can go ahead to respond to the questions now.
Myself, right? So thank you so much, everyone, for these very thoughtful questions. And the research is still ongoing. I appreciate all the comments. And before I go to answer those questions, I'd like to mention that, first and foremost, I'm a Nigerian, and I work with Nigerian farmers. In the last 1 decade, my research has focused almost exclusively on Nigerian farming. And I've worked with farmers across different countries in Africa. So the data that I used to inform my research were actually based on my extensive conversation with farmers since the outbreak of COVID-19, and based on my knowledge working in the farming sector in the country, and based on my conversation with colleagues who are working in Nigerian universities with farmers and who have been doing a lot of research on the impact of COVID-19. And the other thing I want us to take a look to remember is that I train as a system thinker. And when you look at the nature of my presentation, it's based on this concept of system thinking, interconnectedness. It comes with a different framing. Majority of the conversation that I've listened to on the implication of COVID-19 on food security either in the US or elsewhere, they are based on this linear siloed approach. And this conflicts with the nature of food systems. Because when you take a food systems approach to elucidate the likely implication of COVID-19 on food security in any country, you might be seeing a different picture entirely than merely focusing on the issue of food insecurity. Because food insecurity is an inalienable part of something. It's just like when somebody is sick, we are just focusing on the liver. The problem actually has to do with even the teeth itself. That maybe the person has the dental crisis that is actually affecting the kidney, that is actually affecting the liver. So when you look at a problem from a system perspective, you might actually be having a newer and nuanced understanding of what the problem might be. Emphasis on probable. So that is the first thing. So in answering the question that COVID-19 and Boko Haram, two things. COVID-19 is not Boko Haram. We need to understand this first. So it's very possible that some of the predictions that were made on Boko Haram might not actually hold. But we can say this with COVID-19. Boko Haram has never been a countrywide problem in Nigeria. It's been an issue mostly in the northeastern part of the country and some part of the northern part of the country. And even in those places, it's not an issue that affects the urban area. It affects some segments, not even all the local government in a particular state. So we need to take into account the nature of Boko Haram, because the nature will tell us the likely disruptive impact and the possibility of projection holding. This is not the case with COVID-19. COVID-19 is potentially a countrywide problem. It can affect anybody in the country, in the rural area, in the urban area. It can disrupt anything. Nigeria was never on a lockdown because of Boko Haram. The only places that were placed on semi or partial lockdown were just segments of places where Boko Haram were very, very active. So we are dealing with a different crisis. So importing the Boko Haram experiences into the conversation on COVID-19 and food security might actually not be something that we want to do. Otherwise, we will be losing, we won't get a very deep understanding of the threat that we are facing. And now let's go back to COVID-19. One of the things with COVID-19 is that we have the issue of state carriers. What this means is that if somebody in a rural area is a state carrier of COVID-19, because we are not doing aggressive testing in the rural area, the entire rural community, by virtue of their communitarianism, might be infected by COVID-19 within the span of 1 or 2 months. And what that means is that a particular food production segment can be shut down. We can map this into a different part of the food production chain in the country. And that is one way to visualize the likely impact of COVID-19, the likely disruptive impact of COVID-19 on the food systems anywhere, including in Nigeria. And that was why, when I look at it, I said, I painted a different picture that the impact might not necessarily be the same with farmers in the urban center compared with farmers in the rural area. Then we also take a look at farmers that are interstate farmers, intrastate farmers, and farmers that are even farming in the farm settlement. We are dealing with a complex array of layers through which the food production system alone can be disrupted. When you look at it from this interconnectedness, which is on this slide, it means that if there is a disruption in the marketing of food alone, it will send a signal to farmers because they won't be harvesting their crops. If they are not harvesting their crop, the signal might be that farmers will be planting for the next production season. Because you'll be asking the question, why do I need to plant this much? When actually we are not able to get our farm produce to the market center. When you look at the nature of the destructive impact from this interconnected perspective, you'll be seeing a different understanding of the part that COVID-19 might actually place Nigeria in the long and medium term if the COVID-19 situation should exacerbate. it might have very daring negative consequences, subject to if the situation should exacerbate. If the situation exacerbates, the causing the capacity to handle all of this problem, even the little issues we have, the palliatives, the government in Nigeria struggled getting the palliative across to people. People started reporting in some places. We've seen a lot of videos that went viral. So when you look at it from this perspective, I won't discount the argument that if the needful is not done on time, that COVID-19 won't actually plunge Nigeria on the part of severe food insecurity. So from a system perspective, and the assumption that if the situation should exacerbate, I would argue again and resubmit again that Nigeria might actually be facing severe food insecurity. And this might vary because two things here. In the northeastern part of the country, we should still remember Boko Haram crisis is still going. In many parts of the northeastern part of this northern part of the country, banditry is also going on. So when you now add COVID-19 into the equation, then you can imagine the disruptive impact and the likelihood that the country will be placed on the potential of severe food insecurity crisis. And also take note of something. The government income is shrinking. If this should continue and COVID-19 situation should exacerbate, it means that government might not even have the ability to pay salaries. And if government are not having opportunity to pay salaries, people can't go out to work. You can imagine the situation we might face if the situation should exacerbate. I hope this answers the question. Will this happen? It may happen, it may not happen. It all depends on a lot of what ifs. What if includes the scenario I painted. If COVID-19 should go gangrenous in urban and rural Nigeria, this might happen. If the situation is mild, we might have severe food insecurity crisis in the short term. And if the situation is contained, and then Nigeria might not experience all of this. So there are the what ifs that are associated with my projection in terms of the likely impact of COVID-19 in the country. Regarding the question on the food security as a myth and the issue of food wastage, one of the conversations I've had extensively with colleagues in Nigeria and here in the US who are working on the food system is that the problem of food insufficiency or the problem of that we have in many countries is not because we are not producing enough food. That is very true. Because a lot of the food that we produce, they get into waste. If we can actually address the issue of waste, and waste is a very complex thing. It's not a linear thing. Before COVID-19, when I did my doctoral dissertation in Nigeria, I worked with farmers in Nigeria for about 5 years. And these were all organic farmers. They live in the interiors. And one of the reasons why they told me they were disadopting organic farming or they were going to disadopt organic farming was because they were not getting financially rewarding markets for their farm produce. Many of them told me that they would do something that ordinarily they wouldn't have done as rational investors. What they would do is that if they know that I take my produce to the market today, and what I got was not even what the energy that I put into it, they will make a decision that they will rather leave those products to rot away on the farm rather than sell them at anyhow prices. This has been happening in the country before COVID-19. Many farmers, because they don't get good prices for their produce, they experience a lot of waste because of the fact that they just want to sell their produce for anyhow prices. They will continue to eat it wherever rot away. They prefer those things rotting away rather than selling them at anyhow prices. So if we can address the problem of food wastage, which is not something we can do in the short term, it's not something that we say we can address within the next 1 year, within the next 2 years, because scholars and scientists and development practitioners, government, they've been looking at this. It's a complex issue. So that is even a long-term issue. And what that means is that whether there is problem of food waste or because the problem is there, it means that it's also contributing to the problem of food insecurity. Because if those food that are being produced are not getting to the market, they are rotting away on the farm, then that doesn't mean that we don't have the problem of food security. That doesn't make food insecurity a myth, because the problem is there and there are evidences that is affecting food availability. And whatever affects food availability would also affect food accessibility. And whatever affects food accessibility will feed into food insecurity. And the impact could be mild, it could be severe, and it could even be marginal, depending on many situations. The other thing has to do with the issue of border closure. Would we have been in this situation? Thank you so much. Again, I will respond to this question as a system thinker. A non-system thinker will say no, but a system thinker will say yes, it is possible. Because in system thinking, there is what we call the feedback mechanism that gives the particular system what we call the emergence character of a system. The emergence character of a system is not dependent on one single factor. What that actually tells us is that something that is driving a system in the negative direction might, in the next cycle of the behavioral trend of the system, be driving it in the positive direction. And the positive direction might be exponential growth, it could be sinusoidal, it could be anything. It depends on the impact on the system, on every other part of the system. Let's assume this. The government of Nigeria refuses to close border. What this means is that people can be traveling from China, including from where into the country. It includes more people will travel from Germany, where Abba Kyari, late Abba Kyari, actually was said to have contacted the deceased, meaning that many more people will be bringing the deceased into the country. So meaning that, people are moving around, vehicular logistics are moving around, but the disease is also spreading. If this has been the case, it's very possible that Nigeria would have even been another New York. So when you look at it from this perspective, if Nigeria has been another New York, with the rural center becoming a pandemic centers for the spread of COVID-19, it's very possible that Nigeria would have even been facing acute food security crisis now. So I would say that the border closure has actually assisted in reducing the spread of COVID-19, because a lot of COVID-19 cases in the country were actually imported into the country. The first India case in the country was imported by somebody from Italy. We have had cases of people importing it from Cotonou. We have had people importing it from Togo. We've had people importing it from Ghana. We've had people importing it from UAE. So it's been things that are coming from us. So it makes a lot of sense that the government actually closes the border in the country. But the closure of the border also means that the government has closed the border to the importation of food inputs. Just like I show a slide where people are saying that people that are producing bread, they say 60% price hike. Because of the disruption, we might experience 60% price hike in bread prices in the country because they are not getting their production input into the closure of the border. So the border closure has actually assisted us, in my own opinion, to reduce the immediate negative impact of COVID-19 on food insecurity in the country. In the long term, I would argue that the impact would exacerbate, given what we know and the systemic nature of issues around food systems and food insecurity. Then there's another
Doc,
question that...
Hello, Doc.
Yeah?
Hello. Please, can you just respond to the last question in 1 minute, because we don't have the time anymore.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm trying to, on sustainable agriculture, I think Nigeria has been doing well, in fairness to the country, on the issue of sustainable agriculture, because sustainability is a very complex concept. It's a very complex concept. You can look at sustainability from a strong sustainability perspective. You can look at sustainability from a weak sustainability perspective. So it depends on the perspective that you want to use to answer this question. But my response to this question is that Nigeria has been trying to make its food system sustainable. One, when you look at the local rice production in the country, it's at increase over the years. We might have some concerns about the policy direction of the government, but the fact is that the more you increase the local production, your local food production capacity, the better you are moving towards sustainability in agriculture. And then the other thing is that when you look at the production of organic fertilizers in the country, it has also been increasing compared to what we know in the past. But one of the problems that the country needs to address is the fact that the country agricultural policy is overtly, unnecessarily, dominantly focused on the use of synthetic input. And when you look at the soil in the country, they are more like majority of the soil in the country are likely to be acidic. They are acidic, and when you use chemical fertilizer without using inorganic input, you are likely to aggravate the acidity of the soils. So wherever you experience a short-term productivity gain from using synthetic fertilizer might actually be cut down, might be cut short in the medium term and long term, meaning that your cell acidity level will increase with the continued use of synthetic farm input like farm fertilizers or these chemicals. And what that means is that once the acidity level increases, it will affect water, the ability of plants to extract water from the soil, to extract nutrients from the soil. And once that is constrained, productivity will reduce. It will flatten out. And once productivity flattens out, we are going back to square one. We've experienced this in Malawi. We've experienced this in Kenya. So what the government needs to do more is to either do two things: go in the direction of increasing the investment on the use of inorganic materials in the production sector. So when you give subsidies to farmers to buy chemical fertilizer, equally give them subsidies to use inorganic materials. And in fact, compel them to use the inorganic materials so that the farmers will be better positioned to manage their soils. Because if anything goes wrong with the soil, food production is stopped. So you don't want to deplete your production capital. And in the context of your agriculture, your real production capital is your soil. So if the policy direction of the country continues to be overtly chemical-based, then in the long time, Nigeria must not actually be playing on the part of sustainable agriculture. And sustainable agriculture also means we have to address the issue of extension. We have to address the issue in the distribution system of food in the country. It also means we also have to address the issue of technology. What kinds of farm technologies are we getting to the farmer? Because all of these things, we have feedback effect on the climate. Whatever have feedback effect on the climate will affect the pest ecology, meaning that you might be losing more communities of beneficiaries. And when you lose more community of beneficiaries, it comes back to affect your food production. And once your food ecosystem is the country is on the path of severe food insecurity. But I would say the country has been doing fairly well on the aspect of great sustainable, but they just have to do more. And that can be a conversation for another time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adebiyi. Some two questions came in the course of your talk, but we will not be able to take that because of time. We far outspent our time. This is past 5. So thank you very much again. I must admit that we've been well educated with your presentation.